The internet is a funny place. You can pour your heart out to millions of screens and feel completely alone. Or you can whisper one secret and find a whole crowd of people who were listening in the dark. I'm not sure which this is. Maybe it's just me finally at 30 years old trying to make sense of the echo. My name is Cora, and I was the family ghost long before I actually disappeared. To understand that, you have to understand the Venn diagram of my family. My mother, Linda, was a people pleaser so dedicated she'd contort herself into a pretzel if she thought it would make someone like her. My father, Mark, was a quiet man whose main parenting strategy was to nod along with whatever my mother decided. And then there was my brother, Leo. Leo was the son. I mean that in the most literal, exhausting way possible. The entire household revolved around him. He was 3 years older, athletic, charming, with that easy smile that made teachers overlook his slacking and grandparents overlook his occasional cruelty. He was the golden child. The one whose science fair project I helped with got an A. The one whose soccer games we all trooped out to watch, even in the freezing rain. The one whose room my mother kept pristine while mine was a suggestion of a room I was allowed to inhabit. I was the opposite. Quiet. Bookish. I had a habit of staring too long and asking questions that made people uncomfortable. Why does Grandma always smell like medicine? If Leo is so great, why did he take that kid's lunch money? My questions were met with tight-lipped smiles and later sharp corrections. Don't be difficult, Cora. Why can't you just be nice? Being nice, I learned, meant not pointing out the cracks in the family porcelain. The resentment was a low-grade fever in our house. I saw the way Leo's messes were cleaned up for him, the way my achievements, a perfect score on a math test, a story published in the school literary magazine, were met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation pivoted back to Leo's college recruitment letters. I wasn't just the black sheep. I was the shadow, the necessary darkness that proved how bright his light shone. The trip was for Grandpa Joe's 80th birthday. Grandpa Joe was my father's father, and the only one in that entire family who ever looked at me like I was a person, not a problem. He was a retired carpenter with hands like leather, and a workshop that smelled of sawdust and oil. He'd let me sit out there for hours just watching him work. Or he'd teach me how to whittle. "You got a steady hand, Cora girl," he'd say. "A good eye. Don't let the world tell you different." He was my anchor. The drive from Ohio to his place in Montana was a 3-day haul in our beat-up minivan. We were somewhere in the middle of Nebraska, the landscape a flat brown blur, when the van started sputtering. My dad pulled into a gas station. One of those lonely places with a diner attached and a neon sign buzzing in the daylight. I was in the back reading. Leo was in the middle seat, asleep with his headphones on. My parents got out to check the engine. I needed to use the bathroom, so I slid out, leaving my door open. When I came back maybe 5 minutes later, the van was pulling away. I saw the taillights, the dust cloud, the shrinking shape of it as it merged back onto the highway. For a solid 10 seconds I just stood there, my book dangling from my hand, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. It was a mistake. They'd realize in a minute. They'd turn around. I waited an hour on that sun-baked curb, the initial shock morphing into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I went inside and asked the cashier if I could use the phone. I called my dad's cell. No answer. I called the house, got the machine. I left a message, my voice high and thin. "Dad? Mom? You left me. At the gas station. Off Highway 80. Please come back." They didn't come back. Not that day, not ever. I found out later, through a cousin who felt sorry for me years afterward, what happened. About an hour down the road, Leo woke up. He asked where I was. My mother apparently turned pale. My father gripped the steering wheel. There was a conversation, a whispered, tense argument in the front seat. My mother, the peacekeeper, was terrified of the confrontation it would take to turn around. My father, ever the follower, said nothing. And Leo? He just shrugged and said, "Well, it's too far to go back now. We'll be late for Grandpa's party." And that was that. A unanimous, unspoken agreement. They chose the path of least resistance. They chose to erase the difficult, prickly reminder of their own failures. They chose Leo's convenience and Grandpa's party over me. The cashier, a woman named Brenda with tired eyes and a gentle voice, let me stay in the back office until her shift ended. She bought me a burger. She called social services. I was 14. I spent the next 4 years in a series of foster homes. Some were okay, some were not. But one thing they all had in common was that they were better than a family that could drive away and not look back. I never contacted them. The social workers did, initially. My parents confirmed it wasn't a kidnapping, that I just wandered off. They painted a picture of a troubled, difficult child, and the state, overwhelmed and under-resourced, didn't push too hard. I was a ghost just like I'd always been, only now it was official. I decided then that if I was going to be a ghost, I'd be a damn successful one. I studied. I got a scholarship to a state school, then a full ride to a top engineering program. I poured myself into creating stability. I worked, I saved, I built. By the time I was 28, I'd sold my first tech startup for enough money to buy a small island. Not that I bought an island, but I could have. I was comfortable. I was secure. I had a life I'd built with my own two steady hands, just like Grandpa Joe said I would. I never forgot him. I sent him letters, care of his address in Montana. I never got a reply, but I imagined my family intercepting them. I hoped he knew I was okay. Then 6 months ago, a lawyer's letter arrived at my office. Grandpa Joe had died, and he'd left everything to me. Not to my father. Not to Leo. To me. The estate included his modest house, his workshop, some land, and a substantial amount of money he'd saved and invested over a lifetime. The will was ironclad, written 5 years after I'd been lost. It specifically stated in his simple, direct language that he was leaving his estate to his granddaughter, Cora, the only one in the family with any sense and a true heart. That's when the ghosts from my past came knocking. The reading of the will was a circus. My parents, now in their 60s and looking worn and faded, sat on one side of the lawyer's conference room. Leo, puffy-faced and dressed in a cheap suit that couldn't hide his general air of defeat, sat next to them. And then there was me in a tailored blazer, my expensive watch peeking out from my cuff. The silence was a physical entity. My mother's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions, shock, disbelief, and then a desperate, cloying hope. My father just stared at his shoes. Leo's jaw was tight, his eyes burning with resentment. "This is a mistake," Leo sputtered to the lawyer. "I'm his grandson. I'm the one who visited. I'm the one who..." "You're the one who what, Leo?" I asked, my voice quiet and calm. It was the first time I'd spoken to him in 16 years. "The one who couldn't be bothered to have your parents turn a car around for your sister?" My mother burst into tears. "Cora, baby, you have to understand. It was chaos. We thought you'd get a ride. We thought you'd call. We were going to send for you. You were going to send for me," I repeated, the absurdity of it hanging in the air. "From Montana. You left a 14-year-old girl at a truck stop in Nebraska, and you were going to send for her. We made a terrible mistake," my father mumbled, finally looking up. His eyes were watery, pleading. "We've lived with it every day." "Have you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because I don't see a missing persons report. I don't see any evidence of a search. I see a family that was relieved to have one less problem." Leo slammed his hand on the table. "This is bullshit. That money is ours. You think you can just waltz in here after all these years and take what's ours? You always were a selfish, jealous little..." The Cora I remember, I cut him off, was a kid who just wanted to be seen. The Leo the first remember was a bully who got everything handed to him. Looks like things have changed. You're still a bully, but you're clearly not getting everything handed to you anymore. The cheap suit, the desperation. Karma was a fascinating thing. The drama didn't end there. For weeks, my inbox and phone were flooded. Pleading emails from my mother. Long, rambling, guilt-trippy voicemails from my father. Legal threats from a lawyer Leo had clearly found on a bus stop bench. They tried to paint me as the villain, the estranged daughter who had abandoned the family and was now cruelly cutting them off from their inheritance. The final confrontation happened at Grandpa Joe's house. I'd gone there to start sorting through his things. The air in his workshop still smelled of him. I was holding one of his old planes, running my finger along its smooth sole, when a car pulled into the driveway. It was them. All three of them. Leo got out first, his face red. "You can't just ignore us," he yelled. "We have a right to be here." That was our grandfather. I walked to the doorway of the workshop, leaning against the frame. I didn't invite them in. "He was my grandfather too," I said softly. "And he was the only one of you who ever acted like it." My mother stepped forward, wringing her hands. "We're your family, Cora. We love you. Can't we just start over? We've missed you so much." I looked at her. At the lies she told herself to sleep at night. "You don't miss me, Mom. You miss the idea of me. You miss the chance to not be the people who left their daughter at a gas station. You see my success and you think it can fix you. It can't." Leo scoffed. "What do you even know about family? You've been alone your whole life." I smiled then, a real smile. "No, Leo. I've been alone for a large part of my life. There's a difference. Being alone taught me who I was. Being with you taught me who I didn't want to be." I stepped back into the workshop. "I'm going to honor Grandpa Joe's wishes. This place, his things, his money, it's mine. And I'm not going to let you poison it the way you poisoned my childhood. Leave. And don't come back. My mother started sobbing. My father just looked broken. Leo opened his mouth, probably for another round of abuse, but something in my eyes must have stopped him. He saw, maybe for the first time, the girl he'd left behind wasn't a ghost anymore. She was solid. She was real. And she was done. They left. I stayed in the workshop for a long time, the quiet settling around me like a familiar friend. I picked up the plane again. Felt right in my hand. Steady. True. Grandpa Joe always said I had a good eye. He was right. I can see things for what they are. And what I see now is a future I built myself, with a little help from the one person who ever believed in me. The rest of them? They're just part of the past I left behind at a gas station in Nebraska. And I'm not going back.